Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining Congressman Haridopolos' town hall. Before we kick things off, we're going to wait a minute or two for more individuals to join the call. If you have a question you would like to ask, please press *3 to connect to one of our staffers and be put in the queue to ask a question. There are thousands of individuals on this call, so in order to answer as many questions as possible, we ask that you be considerate of everyone's time and keep your questions to 3 sentences or less. We would like this call to be productive and informative, so we will need to keep every caller to 30 seconds or less. You can press *6 to sign up for the newsletter and stay connected on what Congressman Haridopolos has been working on. You can always reach out to the Congressman through the Contact Me portion of our website, calling our office, or following us on social media at Rep. Haridopolos. Again, if you have a question you would like to ask, please press *3 to connect with one of our staffers to put you in the queue to ask a question. We are now ready to begin, so I will hand it off to Congressman Haridopolos.
Good evening. This is Mike Haridopolos. Thank you so much for joining us tonight in our telephone town hall. I really am excited about answering the questions you might have of what's going on in Washington, D.C., and having a real conversation on what is happening in Washington, D.C. It is an honor to serve you as your representative in Congress, and I truly appreciate each of you taking your valuable time to be a part of this conversation. If you'd like to ask a question, please press *3 at any time. That will connect you with a member of our team, and they will get ready to make sure you can ask a question live during tonight's call. So as we await the first questions to come in, I wanted to just go over a couple things that have gone on here in Washington, D.C. in our first 100 days in office. We've accomplished a lot in the last 4 months, but we have a lot of work to make sure America is back on track. In the last 100 days, we've held almost 100 meetings across Brevard, Indian River, and Orange County, talking to local leaders, business owners, and citizens about how we can serve them best in Washington, D.C. Our office has returned over $1.3 million to Florida taxpayers through casework and cutting through red tape. And we've handled over 636 calls successfully and coming to a conclusion. I've held 2 hearings as the chairman of the Space Subcommittee, looking at how NASA is preparing to return to the moon and how we're leveraging public-private partnerships to that end. Additionally, we've passed critical legislation to secure the border and end illegal immigration, roll back previous administration regulations on consumer choice and energy independence, protect the integrity of American elections, and set the stage for cutting spending and tackling our national debt, prevent a massive tax hike from hitting Floridians, and making sure we're fighting for you every single day. Right now, we're in the middle of what's called the budget reconciliation process, one of the biggest opportunities we have to turn our fiscal ship around. In the weeks ahead, my committees and our work in the House will be focused on cutting reckless spending, getting our financial house in order, delivering the resources needed to fully secure the border, unleashing American energy production, and making the Trump tax cuts permanent so there's not a tax increase. Also, of course, President Trump in his first 100 days in office has worked to secure the border. In fact, the number of interactions on the border has gone down by 97%. We've also started to deport criminal illegal aliens and protecting our communities. We're also happy that energy prices, or gas prices specifically, are now under $3 a gallon. And we're fighting back against inflation, working to lower costs. Right now, inflation is actually under 3%. We've seen, of course, the egg prices that had once rose is now down. And we are moving forward on a lot of ideas, including what's called the DOGE, making sure you see exactly where your money is being spent, and we can shine a light on wasteful government spending. And he's also brought other nations to the negotiation table so that we have true fair, free trade, meaning the United States should not be taxed higher than weak tax nations when they bring their goods into our country. And finally, one of my commitments to you is to always be transparent and accountable. That's why tonight is so important. We're going to answer as many questions as we can before I have to head off to vote a little bit before 6:30 tonight. And it's the reason why we have set up the social media sites like we have. We always put out every week what exactly is going on in Washington and who we're talking to, and we want to make sure that you know what is happening in Washington, whether it be by questions or just making sure you signed up for those. So remember, tonight, if you want to ask a question, press *3, and we'll get you into the queue. I look forward to speaking with all of you tonight who can get on the line within the next hour, and we're looking forward to having a productive conversation. So as we get ready to take the questions coming through, we want to first go to some of the questions that came in through social media. A young woman named Christine Stanatik was asking the basic question, which is a good question: why are you not holding an in-person town hall meeting? Well, I would love to hold an in-person town hall meeting, but one of the realities we face with a district that has over 800,000 people in it is how can you get a lot of folks getting a lot of information in a short period of time, especially given our busy work weeks. So what we have done is we've created, this is actually our second tele-town hall, because the last tele-town allowed us to have over 5,000 people on the line. It also affords the ability to ask more questions in a thoughtful way. And candidly, as you've probably seen in some of these other town hall meetings in person, it becomes a circus. People want to make a scene. They want to yell and scream. I want to just handle thoughtful questions that come in, and that's why Christine's question is so important. We want to avoid the circus. We want to avoid the chaos. We want you to ask questions live on the tele-town hall here so I can give you straightforward answers. And you'll also see this very audio go on our social media. So if you can't stay on for the entire hour, just like we did last time, we'll put it up on social media. I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions on Medicare, Social Security, NASA, DOGE, the SAVE Act, energy, whatever it might be over the next hour. We want to make sure you have the answers direct. And if you did not get an opportunity to hear our first tele-town hall from about a month and a half ago, you can still go online and listen to that tele-town hall and get the facts out. And if you have concerns or you don't like some of the answers, feel free to send in your responses along the way. So, Christine, thanks for sending that question in via social media. And the second question we'll get into is we're waiting on the queue here as the different questions are getting online. A lot of questions are coming in, and rightfully so, about Social Security and Medicare. Well, Social Security and Medicare are earned benefits, meaning your entire work life you have paid into Social Security and Medicare, and that's why we're not going to change that program. For those who don't know, Medicare is paid half by your employer and half by you, or if you're self-employed, you pay both sides of that tax. All in, it's about 15%. And so we believe that those programs should not be changed at all. These are earned benefits. And it's something that we do not want to touch, because when you earn your benefits, the last thing the government needs to do is undercut that hard work that you put in from, in many cases, 16, 17, 18 years old. So it's a program we are not going to be touching at all, but I will be commenting on Medicaid should that question come in. But right now, we are focused on making sure that we are moving towards a balanced budget, and we are doing everything we can to keep the economy moving in a forward direction. So our first question is from Kenneth Wayne Hilton. He is asking a question, I believe, about the VA. And so, Ken, you are on the air. If you could please ask a question, we'll do our best to answer.
Yes. My question is, what are you doing to protect the VA budget and address the health concerns of veterans? Because one of the things that I've been experiencing at my local VA here in Brevard County, particularly the Viera VA, is that they seem extremely understaffed, and there are significant wait times, and there's a lot of uncertainty about the VA budget right now because of DOGE interference. So I want to make sure that that's remaining a priority to take care of our veterans.
Well, thank you, Ken, for your thoughtful question. I think it's a very fair question. One of the things I just want to make sure you knew is that I literally went and visited that VA. It is important that I went over to the Orlando VA, and I was actually with the Secretary of the VA, Secretary Collins, and I went firsthand to talk to those folks to find out what's going on and see the facilities that are in place. As you know, that's about an hour from most places in our district, and of course, we have that local Viera office as well. And let me I've received a lot of social media comments especially, and you can check, Ken, if you like, from our previous social media post, some of the facts about this that are actually written out besides what I'm going to talk about now. But Ken, one of the things we kept on hearing is that there's been 84,000 people fired or let go at the VA, and this is just not the fact. As you probably know, over 450,000 people actually work at the VA, and the recent job cuts total just under 2,400 people. But those were non-critical roles like public relations, interior decorators, some DEI components, but not a single doctor or nurse was let go unless they chose to leave the VA. As you know, a lot of people are offered the ability to retire or leave early with the buyout, but not one front-facing person in the VA was let go because we want to prioritize veteran care. And so you know my background as well. My dad was an Army veteran. He has passed away since, and our son is in the United States Air Force. And so I know firsthand, of course, the challenges that people in the military go through, let alone those who have served. Also, the number of people increased over the last few years. From 21 to 2024, there were 52,000 more people hired at the VA. But as we look closely at the numbers, primary care wait times actually, as you brought up, Ken, went up by 60%. Mental health went up by 42%, and specialty care by 58%. Again, those are wait times, and that's why we want to modernize the VA and make the changes necessary so that we can get the benefits that you have earned as a member of our armed forces. And so I want to make sure those facts are out there. We are going to be looking at the new budget numbers, but the key is we have not let go of one doctor or nurse or frontline person because we know how valuable our VA is. And remember, these are the very folks like yourself probably, Ken, that put the time, effort, and literally put your life on line so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we have in our United States Constitution. So, Ken, thank you very much for your question. It's a very good question, and I hope I was able to answer it fully. But again, some of those facts that I was able to lay out for you today are online that you can look at right now on our Facebook page and other social media sites. All right, next we have Mark Bonesteel from Melbourne asking about tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Mark, thank you for making the time to give us a call. Mark?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, I can. There you are, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm questioning why are we renegotiating tariffs when President Trump negotiated these in his first term?
Good question about the tariff issue. And I think that, as you know, when he first negotiated these deals, he said that, times change. And what he really wants to do is make sure we truly have fair, free trade. I think we're going to eventually improve our relations with Mexico and Canada. But in the long term, one of the concerns that I've had is the issue with China. As you know, with China, they actually allow slave
with
labor.
all due respect, let's not diverge from the original question. The president has...
So, Mark, to answer your question, what we are looking at, let's look at, I think you wanted me to get more into the Mexico and Canada question. I think there should be fair, free trade between our three nations. We need to make sure there's a level playing field, meaning that people who Mexico and Canada follow the same pollution controls, labor laws, and so forth. So you have a level and fair trade. So I think that's a good point, and I think something that we really need to stress. Beyond that, I think the issue, as I was getting into with China, is the question that China is a country that has slave labor. They are not looking out for pollution controls. They are ones who steal our research and development. And obviously, they're a communist dictatorship, and they often dump a lot of products in our country. So what the president is attempting to do is to level the playing field and asking some of our partners and friends to simply tax us at the same level we're being taxed. And I think if we do that, that'll give the American worker the ability to literally be on a level playing field. And as we learned during the COVID crisis, China was not exactly the best to work with. And as you know, we're relying way too much on them for the supply chain, especially with medical equipment. I hope that helps, and good question, Mark. Next, we have Marla Blake about the SAVE Act.
Yes, I am really disappointed that you supported the SAVE Act. I'm, woman in my 40s, been married for over 25 years. I'm, not sure that I can produce the documentation necessary to vote with these laws and rules that are being proposed. Why would you support this? And help me understand how I'm going to benefit from this.
Sure. Well, Mary, thanks for the question, and congratulations on a successful marriage. That's a wonderful thing in unique times we're in today. As you know, when looking at polling, over 70% of Americans oppose non-citizen voting, and over 80% support the idea of voter ID. But there is a provision within the bill that requires states to address issues like name changes. Specifically in Section 2, Subsection J specifically contains a provision requiring states to create processes for discrepancies in any paperwork there might be. And so what I've already actually talked to our supervisor of elections, and he has said that the good news is if this is passed, which I hope it does in the Senate, that there'll be plenty of time if there's any kind of concerns about the ability to register. As you know, our next election is not until almost 15 months from now. But bottom line is Americans vote in American elections. The SAVE Act is designed to make sure that exactly the case. If we should hear some additional concerns about, as you brought up, Marla, quite well, we will address that accordingly. But we want to make sure that as the 10 million people came into our country illegally in the last 4 years, that they do not get a fraudulent ability to vote in an American election where they're not actually an American citizen. And it's an issue I take very seriously. My wife, as you probably know, she and I have been married for a long time, but when she changed her maiden name to my name, they were able to easily work through that. And I'm confident with the great supervisor elections that we have here in Florida that if there are any concerns, that we can iron those out, and that's why specifically they put in Section 2 of Subsection J, which will allow those flexibilities to take place and make sure that you have the correct identification if there's any concerns whatsoever. So, Marla, fair question, and that's why I'm glad we're able to get a specific item within that bill, Section 2, Subsection J, that addresses that very good question. Our next question comes from Wendy Huntz, and she's asking the question about Social Security. Wendy, go ahead.
Yes.
Wendy? Oh,
yes.
great.
I just wanted to know what you're doing to save Social Security for all the seniors that are living and residing in Florida.
Well, thank you for your question, Wendy. I think it's a great question. And first and foremost, as you may have heard in the opening part of my dialogue tonight, it is vital that we protect not just Social Security, but Medicare as well, because that is an earned benefit. You've been paying your entire working life to get that benefit once you retire, and it is something that's sacred to me. You work for, in many cases, 40, 50 years in order to earn that benefit, and that's something we're going to protect. And the best way to protect Social Security is actually making sure that our government is more solvent. As you know, we have a big overall debt and a year-by-year deficit, and when we can bring down those numbers, everybody benefits, and vital programs like Social Security and Medicare are protected. It's something that, again, we need to keep that generational promise. And even more recently, there were some concerns that one of the Melbourne offices where they provide some services for Social Security was being discussed. And so we were able to work with the Social Security Administration to make sure that those services that were needed would still be provided in the approximate same area. So we are on top of this because it is a vital program. It is a lifeline for so many seniors, and it is a truly earned benefit. And that's why it's so important that we get rid of wasteful spending, as you probably read about with some of these DOGE reports or specifically even programs like USAID. But Social Security is earned, and you can guarantee that I will be voting to keep that program. And I'm also open to the idea of eliminating that Social Security tax as well, because, again, that's something you already paid taxes on. Why would they put additional taxes on top of it? So, Wendy, thanks for your question, and I hope I'm clear that we are 100% in support of not changing Social Security nor Medicare. Next question is from Dennis Baumann about the CR.
Hello.
Hi, Dennis. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'll make it quick. You said that you support a balanced budget. I know you would like to have get tax reduction for us also, but at the same time, I see that you voted yes on HCON Res 14, which not only acknowledged the $36 trillion national debt, but it also increased the debt by $1 trillion per year, and actually more than that, to where 10 years from now it's projected to be $50 trillion. I also heard on the news this morning that in the current budget that you're working this week, that you're actually looking to get the debt ceiling raised by $5 trillion, okay? All of that seems awfully contradictory to me. Can you tell me why you're voting and you're moving in two different directions?
Sure. Thank you, Dennis, for your question, and I think it's a fair one. Many people know on the call, I'm the former president of the Florida Senate, and one of the things I think would be my long-term goal in Congress is actually to pass a balanced budget amendment. It is the best way we balance budgets in Florida. And if you recall, when I was the leader of the Senate, we actually had a big budget shortfall. We were able to reduce wasteful spending and actually balance the budget without raising taxes, and that is my long-term goal. In the short term, as we face these budget challenges, as you put out very well, Dennis, our goal is to slowly reduce that wasteful spending, and more importantly, the best way to get out of debt is actually to grow our economy. And I'm confident that with the bill that we have before us in the coming months, that by having tax reduction, we're going to stimulate the economy even more. By having fair and free trade, we're going to stimulate more American jobs. And by going after wasteful spending in the long term, we're going to be able to tackle this budget deficit and overall debt. That is my goal, and I think that's something we should all share. I'll also be looking to push a balanced budget amendment so that all politicians are faced with the decision of either balancing the budget or raising taxes. And I think we can balance the budget that way much smarter. But again, the goal is to grow the economy, and we're going to have to look at that right now. In the next couple of months, we're going to be working on what's called a continuing resolution. I think you'll see the cuts in spending to be somewhere between $1.5 and $2 trillion over the next 10 years. And if we do this right, meaning we grow the economy and find that wasteful spending, that we can actually move towards a balanced budget like they had in the late 1990s. And that is the best way that we can help individual Americans, because this debt is not the right way to do things. And Dennis, as I just mentioned, I left politics 12 years ago because I was very satisfied in the direction Florida was going. I'm getting back into politics because I want to bring more of the Florida solutions to Washington, D.C. So, Dennis, thank you for your question, and I really appreciate it. Remember to press *3 if you all have a question. Next, we have Mendy White talking about Medicaid. Mendy, welcome, and thanks for the call.
Hi there. I wonder how you can justify voting against Medicaid and the zeroing out of Medicaid, because that is also...
You cut off there, but you said that is also... Go ahead. You said the last part again. I'm sorry. Okay.
We have a lot of people...
The question...
Go.
Okay. Thank you, Mendy. First of all, I am not for eliminating Medicaid. Let me walk you through what I think, and again, everyone's always welcome to comment online about this. It is a vital lifeline for so many people. Now, remember what Medicaid is. It's supposed to help people in nursing homes. It's supposed to help people who are disabled. It's supposed to help pregnant women who are in need, and those are programs that we have to keep in place. Those are promises made to people in a bad situation, and we are a society that believes in helping people in need, a safety net when difficult times come. What has happened with Medicaid, unfortunately, is that a lot of people are preying on the system in a negative way. One, of course, and you're probably reading these newspaper reports across the country, that illegal aliens are actually getting Medicaid. Second is the idea that people are not telling the truth on the application form, and again, also illegally getting Medicaid. And there are also able-bodied people who are choosing not to work and getting this free benefit, meaning free health care, especially when the average family of four is paying somewhere between maybe $1,500 and $2,500 a month for health care. And so what we want to do is to take people off this program who should not be in the program so that those people in need, as I mentioned before, nursing home, pregnant women, let alone the disabled, get the Medicaid protections they need. That is, to me, the right way of doing things. I think we can save money by making these common sense reforms and making sure that people who are truly qualified for Medicaid get those benefits. It is a program that I do not want to zero out. In fact, just the opposite. The best way to save Medicaid is make sure that people who are not qualified to be on these programs to get off the program and provide the vital services that those seniors need, or those disabled or those who are pregnant need in times of trouble. And so, good question, Mendy. We are not going to zero out Medicaid, and I think it's a very fair question to ask, and I'm glad you asked it. Thanks, Mendy. Next, we have Ray Zach. Ray is asking about, I think, some tax policy and some DOGE issues as well. Is that you, Ray?
Yes.
Hey, Ray, how are you?
Oh, how you doing? I thought you were going to just play my recording. Okay. Yeah, my first question is, how is the big, beautiful bill going through the Senate? Maybe you know how it's going. Because that needs to be passed before this whole economy thing can keep going with the tariffs, obviously. That's part of one of the three-legged stools. And then when is Mr. Musk going to be leaving DOGE, and who is going to be kind of taking over for him? Because DOGE still needs to be done more than what's going on now. I mean, I realize it's been $160 billion saved, but I'm still hoping for that $2 trillion that they kind of said before the election. So that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ray, for your question. First and foremost, as you put, the big, beautiful bill is the idea where we keep the 2017 tax cuts in place. And the reason why it's so important is that if we don't pass those tax cuts, the average Floridian will pay 23% more in taxes. That means an average family of four would pay around $1,600 more per year in federal taxes. That's equal to probably about 8 or 10 grocery trips. And 90% of Florida taxpayers will lose their standard deduction. And we're not going to let that happen. And we're optimistic that the Senate will go along with some of the ideas the House has promoted to not just keep these 2017 tax cuts in place, but also reduce wasteful government spending to the tune of $1.5 to $2 trillion, as I outlined before. As far as the DOGE is concerned, I must admit I'm a little surprised that people are upset about the DOGE and Elon Musk in specific. Here's literally the richest person in the world who has volunteered his time using his expertise, making sure that all federal computer systems can actually talk to each other, which wasn't the case before he got involved. But more importantly, we need to be more transparent on how we spend your hard-earned money. It's something that I did as the leader of the Florida Senate. We put full transparency in place. I created a program called Transparency Florida, and that made it where everybody can see where every dollar came from and how every dollar was spent. That's the same thing we need in the federal government, because when you do that, people spend their money smarter when someone's looking over their shoulder. And we need to really be vigilant, because as the question was asked before by Dennis, how do we save money and move towards a balanced budget? It's by putting how the money is spent out there in a thoughtful way, and we'll make a better decision on how they spend the money. But let's also be clear that DOGE is a program where people went into the system. They were all federal employees. They got their background checks. We knew exactly who was looking at the program, and then recommendations were made. But just because a recommendation was made didn't mean that changes actually took place, but it highlighted some of the spending that most people would not have approved had it been in the light of day. And so I'm very optimistic that the DOGE will continue. More importantly, every person on this call, whether they be Democrat, Republican, or independent, they can see how those dollars are being spent. And that is so important, because the way that we improve our government is we make it a lot more like the Florida government, which is in the sunshine, not just legislation, but also how money is spent. And so I'm excited that we're moving in that direction. And it's so important that we listen to people after they see how money is spent. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it, Ray. And as a reminder, press *3 to ask a question. and press star 6 if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, if you want to. At this point right now, we have almost 10,000 people online. That's why we're having a tele-town hall. To try to get 10,000 people in Brevard, Orange, and Indian River County would almost be impossible. I'm so glad that people want to tune in, find out what's going on in Washington. And it's not just tonight that you can find out. Again, go to our social media sites, and that's where a lot of questions are being asked and answered, and we're doing our best to tell you exactly what's going on in Washington beyond all the hubbub that we hear from all different types of media sources. I want to be as direct as we can, and I hope I'm doing that for you again tonight. Next, we have Gary Angel asking about the court system here in our country. Gary, you're on the air.
Thanks for taking my call. I was wondering if there's any legislation in the works to curb these district judges from overriding the executive branch, particularly regarding immigration. It seems like we got 400 plus district judges, and every time you turn around, another one's overriding Trump.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. As you probably know, I'm a former history teacher at the college level, and I'm a big follower of our United States Constitution, the greatest government document ever created. And I believe in the checks and balance system. There's a role for the judiciary, there's a role for the legislative branch, and of course the executive branch as well. But no one should be bigger than the other. And as you brought up, Gary, the one single district court judge is actually undercutting the actions of democracy, meaning clearly when President Trump won a landslide last fall and won the popular vote, people wanted to see changes in immigration and other programs, and yet what some groups who aren't happy with President Trump and the election results, they're what they call judge shopping. They're going out, they're finding a more liberal judge to stop some of the actions we're doing to, for example, securing the border. And so what we did in the United States House of Representatives, we actually passed a bill that stopped these type of actions. We do not think that one judge should allow for to be, in essence, be a dictator over what can and cannot happen. That's why we have democracy. That's why we have a federal system of government, and why we should have an even more transparent form of government. And so judicial activism is undercutting the will of democracy and the rule of law, in my opinion, and you've seen one district judge trying to stop that. This is very similar to what happened in President Trump's first term when he attempted to truly secure the border, but over and over again, judicial activism stopped him from putting some of the common sense measures in place that have allowed us to secure the border more recently. But again, we need checks and balance. I respect the rule of law. That's why the U.S. Congress, where I serve in the House of Representatives, passed a bill that says these type of district judges can't unilaterally stop the actions. And if that's the case, there should be some type of hesitation so that they can move up to a higher court and check to make sure that those different actions are constitutional. But one judge should not be able to stop the wheels of progress in a thoughtful way, especially as we tackle issues like illegal immigration. So, Gary, good question. We'll actually make sure that you can see that bill that we passed. It has already been passed by the House. We've sent it over the Senate. And again, we want to make sure there's balance there. It's a common sense thing to do. And again, this judge shopping, as we call it, has undercut the election. And I think President Trump has every right to move forward, especially as you move in a common sense way on the illegal immigration issue. Next, we have a fellow named Scott Miller who wants to ask a question about health care here in Washington. Dr. Miller?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. My question relates to ongoing cuts in physician reimbursement for Medicare patients. It's continuously happened over the last 10 years plus, and each year it seems to get pushed along and not directly accounted for. I'm just curious, with all of the Medicare patients and the increased costs associated with taking care of them, how do we do a better job of making sure Medicare reimbursement doesn't get cut?
Well, thank you very much for your question, Scott. Dr. Murphy, who's actually a congressman out of North Carolina, is pushing a bill that I support. What has happened over the last few years, because of the expansion of Medicaid and other programs, it really put a lot of pressure on Medicare. And so what the federal government did over the last few years is actually reduce doctors' reimbursement, as you probably know. And when you think about when you start reducing doctors' reimbursement, a lot of doctors stop taking Medicare, let alone Medicaid. We have a doctor shortage in this country already. The last thing we need to do is to limit options for seniors on Medicare from getting and seeing the doctor that they want. And so these reimbursement rates have been made it where in some cases it doesn't even actually cover the cost of that doctor who runs a practice, et cetera. And so Dr. Murphy has a bill that will make up for some of these situations, and we want to have a very vibrant Medicare system where you can see the doctor of your choice and making sure that every doctor opts into covering not only Medicare but potentially Medicaid. The way we do that, again, is doing some of the reforms we talked about before, which is stopping that wasteful spending on Medicaid and also giving you, whether it be traditional Medicare or a Medicare Advantage program, whatever fits your individual needs based on your budget or lifestyle. And so that's why I've sponsored the bill by Dr. Murphy. We think by putting the Medicare reimbursement numbers more in line to where the economy is, as opposed to some of the decisions made by bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., setting those reimbursement rates, I think that's a win-win, so you can see the doctor of your choice. And if you're seeing the doctor of your choice, you're more likely to have a successful outcome. So you never make it into the emergency room, which costs so much more than getting good basic primary care. And as many people know, my wife is a medical doctor. She has not practiced for many years, so she has no direct vested interest. But she's a doctor, and we talk to a lot of those doctors. We want to make sure they're providing the high-quality Medicare and Medicaid services that are necessary for hardworking taxpayers who truly qualify for the question. So thank you for your question, Scott. We're going to move to Tracy Rosenblatt. Has a question about illegal immigration, I believe.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead, Tracy.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for taking my question. Forgive my ignorance if this is not true, but how are the illegal aliens able to cripple Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid service and get free medical services without a Social Security number? I that this is what we all believe that is happening, and that is why Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid is in danger. How are they able to get that? And then we have to work hard.
Well, Tracy, thank you for your call, and unfortunately, it's a very fair question. I'm actually going to be speaking on the House floor next week about this very issue, about how illegal aliens are getting these Medicaid benefits, and it's running up a tremendous tab. According to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, illegal immigrants ran up $16.2 billion in emergency or services alone during the Biden-Harris years. And according to Florida ACA is the regulatory agency in Florida, illegal immigration cost the state of Florida over $660 million a year alone in 2024. And so we are very concerned about that. As I mentioned before, Medicaid is a program that is in jeopardy because so many people have abused the system and so many people have qualified by providing false information about their true income, or states like California have allowed illegals to get on that system. And what's so frustrating for so many hardworking families that I talk to say, I'm paying $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 a month, whatever it might be for my family's health care, and I have to subsidize it for someone who really shouldn't be on the program because they're either an illegal alien or they falsified information in order to get that benefit. That's not the American way. And so what we want to do is we want to provide Medicaid services for those truly in need and truly qualify. As I talked about earlier, those are for seniors in nursing homes. Those are for disabled. That's for pregnant women, for example, but not for people who are able-bodied or who gamed the system, let alone illegal immigrants. And so we are moving in that direction to make sure that does not happen anymore. And those states that are allowing that are undercutting the people who truly need that program. And they're in some communities actually overrunning hospitals like in Texas and other border states because so many illegals are taking advantage of the, let's just say, the generosity of the American taxpayer, and that's not fair. So we want to eliminate people who the benefits for those people who are getting these programs who are illegals, let alone gaming the system. It's going to be a tough fight because of some of the court cases we're seeing, let alone what the other party is talking about. But that's how we write the system. It's the same way that we can save Medicare, Medicaid, let alone Social Security, is by being financially responsible and only giving benefits to those people who have truly earned it through citizenship or with Social Security and Medicare, where they actually paid payroll taxes their entire working life. Next, we have Leslie Mitchell talking about taxes and other programs.
Hi, thank you. The question that I originally had has actually been answered. So my question that I have for you now is, you were just talking about activist judges and so on, but I'm really concerned that mass deportations are taking place without due process. And if there was due process going on, you talk about transparency, shouldn't there be more transparency when deporting people so that mistakes are not made and judges don't have to block the actions that have been taken? Because they are.
Leslie, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead. You said they are and you got cut off. Go ahead.
Oh, how much did you hear?
Yeah, I think I got the gist of your question, but I think you have a fair question about due process and deportations. Let me answer that as best I can, but thanks for the question, Leslie. As I think most people know on the call, anywhere between 8 and 12 million people came across the border illegally in the last 4 years. It put a lot of stress on education services, healthcare, let alone law enforcement, and those border towns, let alone as they were shipped across the country. And so what has happened thus far, about 100,000 illegal aliens who have a criminal background for the most part have been deported. And I got to admit, I think there are going to be some mistakes made in this process. But let's also try to look at it in another light as well. If you have 10 million people who are here illegally, and you had held, in essence, 10 million court cases to decide and quote, due process, I don't even know what that price tag would be. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars. I have no idea, but that's something that's on the pragmatic side. Let's just be clear. If you came into this country illegally, you have clearly broken the law. Now, if there's an asylum case, that is probably something different, but that's why we want to go with what's called the Remain in Mexico policy. If you want to apply for asylum, you should, quote, remain in Mexico, put your paperwork in, make your case there, as opposed to putting additional stress on the American law enforcement, hospital, education system, let alone the court system in America. And, so many people talk to me about affordable housing. I mean, think about it. 10 million people, is most likely the number, came into this country. And you talk about supply and demand laws, that means 10 million people want to find a place to live. That's going to cause prices to rise, obviously. So what we need to figure out, and I think they're still in the process of doing so, is saying, hey, how can we legitimately give, quote, due process to people when there's 10 million of them here illegally? And if you try to do it through the court system, that the cost would be astronomical, and it'd probably take you a dozen years to even run all those cases. So what we're going to attempt to do in the first step, and the Trump administration's already started that is that they are going after criminal persons, not just an obvious act of breaking the law coming into the country, but they actually broke the law on top of that once they got here. Those people are being deported first. And you've seen some of the situations with El Salvador and so forth. But look, it's a big problem and a big cost for a nation that's already run up a big deficit and overall debt. And so I think that we're going to try to do our best to have due process. But remember, the only constitutional crisis in my mind is that here are hardworking Americans paying more for housing because of the 10 million that came in. They're paying for illegal aliens' Medicaid costs and others. And there have been some major crimes committed by some of these folks who came over illegally. And finally, what about those people who came in, who want to come to this country legally, but they don't get the opportunity and other people are cutting in line in front of them? I think it's a fairness issue. We're doing the best we can to kind of adjudicate that. But a due process is also a reality check of how do you give due process to 10 million people who have already broken the law. So, Leslie, fair question, and that's the question we're grappling with right now. All right, next we have Joe Reale. Joe has a question, I believe, about taxes.
Good evening. Congratulations on a very productive and successful first 100 days. My question, I think you've already touched on Social Security. We've paid in, and you are taxed when the money comes out. Hopefully, when we do the tax bill, we will rectify that. Also, we pay into Medicare our entire working lives. We retire. We pay Medicare premiums, and we pay an additional surcharge, IRMA surcharge, on top of our Medicare. Can we do something to get these penalties against senior citizens removed? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Joseph. And again, as I talked about before, these are earned benefits. This is not a welfare program in any stretch of the imagination. These are earned benefits, and so we need to protect those earned benefits and try to reduce those taxes accordingly. Again, when you've already paid into the taxes on this, why are you being taxed on a tax? It's one of the reasons why President Trump has brought it up, and I think we can find a common sense way to try to help that program along. And when we start moving towards a balanced budget, when we start really exposing some of the wasteful government spending, that frees up money for programs like Social Security and Medicare. And let's not forget, when Obamacare was expanded, they took money from Medicare to pay for Medicaid expansion, which is, in essence, Obamacare. So I believe, in first and foremost, you cannot undercut Social Security or undercut Medicare, because people, that is a lifeline that they have earned. They have paid their entire working life, and some of these new additional questions have also come up. And so, Joseph, you can count on me protecting Social Security and Medicare, because you have worked incredibly hard for it, and we're going to do our best to provide some common sense tax relief for those Social Security benefits along the way. So thanks for your question very much, and we have a little less than 10 minutes left, so Joseph, thanks for your question. Next, we have a question from Roger Quinn, I think on the Ukraine.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. I think everyone on this call would realize that Putin is not the friend of the United States, and I was very pleased that for years we had bipartisan support to make sure that we didn't hand Putin a victory. Now, it seems like we're about to broker a deal where we would recognize Crimea as a Russian state. What is your position on our direction for the national long-term interests with the Ukraine war? Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, for your question. And I'll tell you what, the American taxpayer has been incredibly generous to the people of Ukraine. What Putin did, of course, is wrong, and we never want to see a war like this. It is a nasty war, very reminiscent of World War I trench warfare, just a horrific situation, which has cost how many hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost on both sides of this. American taxpayers have given approximately $200 billion or more to help the Ukrainians in this situation. But it is a war that must come to an end. And it's a war that also, considering it's in Europe's backyard, that they need to step up, meaning our European NATO allies, and pay more of their fair share, which it should be at least 3% of their economy. So that being said, the United States, I think, is on the verge of negotiating a peace settlement. I'm not exactly sure because, as you know, there's a lot of innuendo going back and forth. I was glad to see that the leader of Ukraine and President Trump were sitting down a couple days ago with the unfortunate passing of the Pope. But we need to end this war. It has cost too many lives and dollars, and the quicker we end it, the better. Let's hope that we can find a negotiated peace which is fair. But more importantly, President Trump is committed to peace, and we need to bring that to this region. And again, American taxpayers, think about that almost $200 billion. How many people on Medicare or Social Security help we can give to people if we put that $200 billion, or at least not even spent that money? And so we have to find that right balance because we can't get involved in every war. I don't want the United States military ever involved, let alone be the world's policeman. I think the United States has really stepped up to make sure that Putin did not make a quick power grab, but we need to end this war in what hopefully will be somewhat fair terms. But it's going to be a tough one, and we're going to need all the talent of not just President Trump, but also our Secretary of State, our former U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, to work at an agreement that will stabilize that region and bring peace, because this area has been war-torn for years, and I'd love to see this war end. So, Roger, thanks for your question, and hopefully they'll solve this quicker than later. Remember, *6 if you want to subscribe to our newsletter. There's still about 10,000 people on this call, and again, I'm grateful that so many people have stayed in the line as we're doing our best to answer as many questions as possible. We have a Richard Finley talking about college campuses. Richard?
Yeah, hi. How can we make it illegal for foreign students to attend political, how to put my glasses on, to attend political uprisings on campus or any other place? Shouldn't they be expelled if they're doing this? And also,
yes.
Trying to find it. Why is there?
I think Richard got broken up there. Well, let me try to answer this question as best I can. The Department of Education is holding those universities accountable for refusing to protect Jewish students from harassment. You've seen the recent actions at Harvard, and of course, a lot of university presidents were let go because of the good questions that Congresswoman Elise Stefanik asked. We need to protect Jewish students who've been really harassed and in some cases physically hurt and harmed by these radicals on campus. When you come over on a student visa, you're supposed to tell your background and so forth, and you've seen some of these people abuse that or simply lied on those applications. We need to protect our college students. College should be a voice of reason, of education, and not harassment, which is clearly happening. And so if these universities wish to carry out these policies against Jewish students, they're going to lose federal funding. It's that simple. You can't violate federal law and continue to take federal funding. And so I think this is why we're trying to do our best to hold universities accountable. They need to look out for all students and not take sides, and they need to make sure that universities are truly ideas that are debated, kind of like tonight. It's the reason why I'm having this town hall, is that we want to ask and answer questions and not have people yelling at each other, which happens too often on college campuses. College campuses, as a former college instructor myself, are designed for fact-based debate, common sense, thoughtful debate, and I'm glad that you asked this question. It's so important, Richard. I appreciate that. And again, the universities need to protect all students and not put especially Jewish students in harm's way. And so thank you for your question. As we're getting ready for the final question, it's from Michael, I think, Kinley. He wants to talk about Trump and his executive orders. Michael, you're recognized for a question.
Oh, take my question. So my question is what are you and the rest of Congress doing to make sure Trump's executive orders are more than just executive orders? They're useful for now, but next administration or the next administration after that may undo them unless you guys make them laws.
Well, I'm glad you asked the question, Michael. I'm working with the Republican Study Committee, which I am actually one of the leaders within that group. We want to codify some of his executive orders in a variety of ways, especially in dealing with illegal immigration and making sure that other people are protected in general. And so what has happened is that the Republican House of Representatives has passed a lot of these laws. Whether it be about judicial activism, whether it be about illegal immigration, whether it be on other policies. Of course, the United States Senate, they need 60 votes in order to codify many of those actions. But we have done our part in the U.S. House to codify those, because what we don't want to see, whether Republican or Democrat, is this tennis-type match, back and forth, back and forth. That's what we had when President Trump was defeated in 2020, and you saw the Biden administration go the other direction on the border, and look at all the chaos that followed. We need to pass laws. The U.S. Senate needs to allow a lot of these bills to come up for vote, especially the ones that were so strongly supported in the election. People want tax relief. People want to see Medicaid given to only those people who truly earned it and deserve it. They want to see programs like Medicare and Social Security protected. But unfortunately, the United States Senate, with the 60-vote threshold, has stopped a lot of the good actions that we've attempted to do in the United States House, such as the SAVE Act that I talked about earlier, that makes sure that only Americans can vote in American elections. We are going to do our best in the House to continue to pass bills, send those over to the Senate. But unfortunately, at this time, Chuck Schumer, who's the minority leader, has been stymieing and using the filibuster to prevent votes from coming up. These are the challenges we face, and that's why things like budget reconciliation are so important, because they can't filibuster budget reconciliation. You only need a simple majority to pass those measures as opposed to the traditional way. And so I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know that we had in total over 10,000 people, and I think a lot of them actually stayed in the line. I hope I was somewhat informative and kept you involved, but it doesn't stop here. As we wrap up, I want to say thank you for sharing your valuable time with me. It's an honor to represent you in Congress, and we're doing our best to deliver results for your hard-earned tax dollars and fight for the future we all believe in. If you ever need anything, feel free to reach out to our office locally, 632-1776, or go online and contact our Washington, D.C. office with an email or a phone call. But this is how we gain your trust, answering as many questions as possible as we did tonight, and having you being a part of that conversation. We did our best to get as many people on tonight, and you could hear firsthand their questions. But look, America is the greatest country ever in the existence of mankind. I was honored to teach classes on the United States history, and I re-entered politics because I believe in the American dream, and I want to make sure that our kids have the same opportunity that I've been blessed with as my wife has. Thank you so much for giving me the honor of a lifetime of representing you in Congress, and I will do my best to stay informed. But remember, please sign up for our newsletter at *6, or go to our social media sites. You'll see that a lot of the questions that have been answered orally by me today are actually typed up, whether it be the VA, Social Security, the border, because you deserve to know. These are your hard-earned tax dollars. And so I am on my way to go vote. If you turn into C-SPAN, you'll probably see me running around there doing my best. But it is an honor to serve you in Congress, to serve on the Financial Services Committee as the whip, and, of course, the chairman of the Space Subcommittee. Have a wonderful evening. And, again, thank you for the time tonight. We really enjoyed it, and we're going to continue to have these conversations throughout my tenure in Congress so that we can answer your good questions and make sure your hard-earned dollars are spent in the best way. Good night, and God bless.